You're listening to the Holistic Spaces podcast brought to you by Mindful Design Feng Shui School, episode 95, Autumn Declutter Time. Welcome to episode 95 of the Holistic Spaces podcast, where we hope to inspire, educate, and empower you to create your own holistic spaces that nurture and resonate with you. Laura Morris and Angie Cho are the founders of Mindful Design Feng Shui School. We teach and provide guidance on how to shift your energy and revitalize your living spaces with the ancient practice of Feng Shui. Mindful Design School offers Feng Shui courses and certifications. Check us out at mindfuldesignschool.com. And we're just starting our next certification program. So if you're interested in becoming a Feng Shui consultant or diving deep, check it out. Visit mindfuldesignschool.com. So, hey, Laura, how are you today?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good.
Good.
So today's topic, autumn and decluttering. So can you tell the listeners what about autumn is good for decluttering?
Well, autumn in Feng Shui, seasons are, everything is connected. Let's just put it this way. In Taoist tradition, which Feng Shui is a part of, there are many layers to a cosmological system where things are connected. And let's start with the 5 elements, which I'm sure for those people that have been listening to the podcast or read about Feng Shui, you're familiar with that. So the 5 elements are essentially types of energy or types of qi. And each of those 5 elements is actually connected to many things. And one thing that they're connected to, each one is connected to, is actually a season as well. So there's lots of layers to them. It's a very nuanced and complex system. But you can look at each of the 5 elements, and the 5 elements being wood, fire, earth, metal, water, and know that each of those has a season that's attached to them as well. And earth is a little bit different because earth is kind of the in-between of each of the seasons. So for autumn, it is metal. That is the element that is connected with fall and autumn. And the reason is that as the cycle moves forward through seasonal, and everything is cyclical, in autumn, things are dying in a way, right? Things are shedding. Trees are losing their leaves. In the northern hemisphere, this is what's happening now. They're losing their leaves. Things are contracting. Trees are reserving their energy, pulling in, so they can conserve for the winter, because the winter is coming. And so it's preparing for that really yin time of cold stillness. And so before that, this metal energy is about contraction, coming in, pulling together, but also finishing and completing things, right? So you can sort of say that metal energy is about resolution, is about things kind of being completed, also being able to sit back and seeing how things have come to fruition. And there's this completion element to it. So that is why you want me to tell you why it's good for decluttering, right? That was the question too, as I went off into this whole thing. Okay. Because so you guys can probably put it together. So if you think of all of those things, we often talk about decluttering in springtime because spring cleaning, right? Which is a different energy entirely. And it is a good time to sort of clear up and open up things for the after the winter time. But for this, in the fall, it really is a time where we're preparing, we're storing, we're bringing our reserves, we're completing things and finishing things up before we go kind of hibernate for the winter. Let's put it that way. So when you declutter, or get your life in order, would probably be the way I would refer to it a little bit more. Decluttering, you know how I feel about decluttering.
Remind us how you feel about decluttering.
Decluttering,
4-letter words.
Yeah. I mean, it's everywhere right now, obviously. And there are many practices that are rooted in real methods to looking at that it's more than just clutter. And I appreciate those entirely. But for me, Feng Shui is feng shui and clutter are not the same thing, right? But the element of creating space in your life, using the elements like metal, energy, what we're talking about here is about creating space to open up, to finish things off, to organize things. Because when you have a lot of metal energy, it's very organized. It's very, things are in their place. And that is a different way of looking at it, rather than getting frustrated and saying, oh my gosh, I have so much clutter, I'm a bad person. Which minimalist lifestyle is not something that I think everyone needs to do. And I think everyone's energy is different, and people need to find the right balance for them based on their own energy. So someone with a lot of metal in them, the minimalist lifestyle is perfect. Like that's really what they want. That's how they thrive. That's how they function. But everyone could use, at this time of year, everyone could use a little bit of preparation, right? And like wrapping up things, completing things, getting ready for the winter is how I would think of it, in a kind of a broader, energetic way.
Yeah, I think seasonally, because you and I were talking about earlier how it's different than spring, but it's almost like a mirror, like the opposite, like the other side of the coin to spring. And I think it's a natural time to release, like the trees. If you just look outside, like in the last episode we talked about how our students ask about books all the time. But the greatest teacher is to just be outside in the world and to talk to people and connect with the world and connect with your home. And if you look outside, fall is a natural time for the trees to release their leaves. And so it makes sense. And also we're just ending Virgo season, but Virgo's also like this energy of organization and grounding. So it's a good time to let go. And I used to feel really similarly about clutter. I mean, I still do, with like similar to Laura, but I'm being more soft about it, because I personally have the tendency to accumulate a lot of things. And I've seen it's becoming more and more apparent, like this year, especially since we've been at home, and I'm nowhere like close to having a clutter, like anything of a problem. And most people I know don't have a problem with clutter, but I think it just makes sense to release things and let things go. Like I've been thinking a lot about books, for instance. Like I have a lot of books that speaking of books, I don't really read that many books, and I have all these books, and maybe it's time to let them go and make space to let go of old ways of thinking and to invite in new ways, and have that space. Because on a real mundane level, if I have like 10 books on a shelf, I'm not going to want to buy a book that I want to read, because I'm thinking, oh, I have these 10 books that I should read, that I've been meaning to read, but then I don't read them for whatever reason. So they've served their purpose, and then it's totally okay to let them go. You could donate them, you can offer them to someone, and then you're free to buy that one book that you actually do want to read, that's more appropriate for whatever is going on with you right now. And then if you ever want those books again, you can always buy them again. And that's something that I see a lot too. There's a connection with clutter and poverty mindset. A lot of people hold on to things they don't need because they think they might need them again one day, which is coming from a sense of lack. So when you can let go and be open to receiving it later when it's more appropriate, if you ever do, instead of working on this premise that I might need it one day, versus being present in what it is you need right now.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And as you were saying, the other side of the coin. So, because fall, when you're saying look outside and use your surroundings, your environment, and nature to give you cues. I live in a place I live in a rural place now because I live outside of Toronto. north of the city, and I live in an area where there's lots of agriculture. Actually, if I, hit a golf ball, I'll end up in farmers' fields. So that is when you start to live in a rural area or you're in the midst of agriculture, you get a real sense of the cycles of life, because farmers, that is, and this is where historically, when you look, Feng Shui came from. I mean, it was really to help, feed people, nourish people, make sure that they had food, they had, that looking at how the fields grew, making sure they were in the right place. And so for this time of year is a time of, also we're talking about decluttering, but it's a time of abundance because it's harvest time. Everything is being harvested, but it's being harvested and then it's being organized and it's being stored and it's being meticulous about it and it's not being wasteful, and it's appreciating it because you are preparing. So part of fall is completion. It's finishing. The fields are done. The corn is done. It's going to be harvested. The human corn is now eaten, like the ones that people eat, is done. But now we're going to do cow corn, which stays on longer. And then the fields are going to be bare soon. And that is where, and then, in a few months, especially where I live, we're going to have snow. So this is, what does that mean when you look at it from a natural standpoint? And again, looking at what's happening in nature and what's happening in the outside world, is that this idea of completing, organizing, preparing is a very metal thing, right? It's a very metal energy to do that. And part of that, if you don't make space for the things that you need to prepare for going forward, and that could be literally going forward for the winter, or it could just be going forward in your career or going forward in your life, you need to be able to get organized, make space so that you can be abundant and hold what you actually need in order to succeed, right? So you can think of it, taking it from like the macro and then really thinking of it in practical terms.
Yeah, that's so good. So I mentioned I've been working through books, and I've also made little goals for myself, to real gentle goals. My approach is with a lot of gentleness and kindness. So, 9 is number of completion. Speaking of completion in Feng Shui, so I give myself little, maybe weekly goals of like, I'll let go of 9 books this week, or 9 pieces of clothing, or 9, it's mostly clothing and books. But so that's what I've been working on. And what about you, Laura? I mean, I think you manage things better than I do, probably.
Yeah, I never bring anything into my house unless I let something go. That's just always been the way I do things.
One in, one
Yeah,
out.
one in, one out. And even before I knew that was a thing, that was just, and part of the reason was just probably justification for buying new things. But maybe if I really unpack that, but I spend a lot of time, because I don't know if anyone else feels this way, but this time of year is back to school energy, even though, I mean, we are going back to school because we're teaching students. So we're teachers. So yes, we still have that, but I can never shake that sense that, be it university or grade school or high school or whatever, that's that time where September moving in and into the fall is such a big transitional time. And I love the energy around, okay, it's like you get to start over. You get to school, you get to have, things are cooling down. So, sweater weather, all those great things. But if for me, there's a real energy of preparing for a focus, a time of focus. And I think that brings it back to metal energy, because metal is very focused. And so I'm like, okay, there's a new session starting with our students, I'm organizing my desk. I've cleared out my desk. I've like basically shook out my rug, as I have this big rug. I took it out, I cleaned it. I'm rotating my plants because my plants need to be rotated. And I am putting an emphasis on different things in my office because I spend time doing different things during different seasons. And this fall is all for Angie and I, basically September, October, November, we are is like bonkers terms of teaching. Like we're just teaching and preparing and working with students. And so I really need my office to reflect that. And I really need my space to support me for that. So yes, a lot of organizing, a lot of decluttering, a lot of packing away things that I don't need to use anymore until probably like the springtime maybe, or Christmas time. I paint, and I just don't think I'm going to be painting until at least Christmas time, just because my energy and my creative energy is so focused on something else. That's just, as creatives, that's why I am. When I'm creative, I have to focus. So I've packed away my artist supplies and sort of, because I really want to be present and be there for the students and show up. And there's that, and I love back to school energy, so I'm excited about it too.
Yeah. What are so your tip for decluttering
My
is
tip for
one in, one
decluttering,
out.
one in,
One
one
in,
out.
one out.
And your workspace should be reflective of where you want to focus your energies on. And you can, clear it off. There's a 50-50 rule with desktops. So you should be able to see at least 50% of your desktop is what I've been told. But before, at some points it's completely covered, and that's okay, because that's when you're really working. But before you start that new session, that new work, that new initiative, especially if it's that back to school energy, clear your desk off entirely, reorganize it, and pack away anything that you feel you're not really going to be needing to focus on right now.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Yeah, so, and I think I already gave my tip. My tip is basically be gentle. You can use 9 as a number, either like give yourselves not 9 minutes a day to declutter something, or 9 minutes a week, or 9 items, something really manageable. And if it's really difficult for you, if you have a lot of things that are very meaningful, maybe you don't need to declutter. But if you can also do like real low hanging fruit. Doesn't have to be anything that you're going to cry over. And someone I know who's an organizer, she said, if you've thought about it 3 times, if you've thought about it 3 times that you should maybe get rid of something, you should get rid of it. You should, let it go, not get rid of it, let it go. So, so those are our tips for autumn decluttering, and why autumn's a great time to declutter and organize.
Mm-hmm.
So thank you so much for listening to this episode of the Holistic Spaces podcast. Laura and I are really grateful for all of you. And please continue to tune in the second and fourth Mondays of every month for a new podcast episode. If you like our podcast, please share it with others. You can subscribe. I think we're like, what are we on? We're on iTunes. We're on Apple Podcasts. We're on Stitcher. And we're on, what's the new one that
Spotify,
I think. I can't remember. So, and you can also leave a review.
and now YouTube.
Oh yeah, and YouTube. Oh yeah, we're going to be on YouTube.
Yeah, you can watch us record.
Oh yes, you can watch our recordings on YouTube. So if you'd like to explore the world of holistic spaces and feng shui on an even deeper level, you can visit our website, our store, our blog for more information, and you can support the podcast by checking out our certification and our practical feng shui course at mindfuldesignschool.com. Thank you, and we'll see you in a couple weeks.